Well, the conclave to choose a new pope set to begin on May 7, a week from Wednesday, and there are some rules to keep everything top secret. Cardinals have to be there in person and cast their own ballots, no Zooming. Other people inside include technicians, medical workers, and assistants. No listening devices allowed. Everyone swears an oath of secrecy, and the Cardinals have no contact with the outside world. Martha McCallum spoke exclusively in Rome to one of the Cardinals who will be inside the conclave, New York Archbishop Timothy Cardinal Dolan.
You're one of the few, a handful, who were here the last time, 12 years ago. So this will be your second conclave. What do you have to do to help people get familiarity with each other and their thinking? Give us a little walk through what next week will look like.
It's a little embarrassing because I'm one of the old timers. So they come up, oh yeah, you've been a cardinal for 13 years. You were there in 2013. So yeah, I'm honored, that they would, not just to me, but the other old timers that are around, and say, what do you think we need to think about? What do you think, what's the next step? We really get to know each other. Every cardinal will have the chance to speak. Do they speak about, oh, I think this guy should be the next pope? Baloney. They're not about to say that. They will speak about where they come from and what they see to be the light and some of the darkness in the church. What they see to be the blessings and what they see to be the challenges, see? And this will give us not only appreciation for that cardinal's wisdom about where he comes from, but also it'll give us a sense of that wider church.
How do you get to know each other when you look at this big group? Do you have
Martha,
social events together?
Would know, we would already know of one another. I mean, you obviously know the new cardinals, you kind of read their biographies, you're kind of familiar with from where they came, but we don't know one another yet. Now, we would, some of the old timers, we'd know one another, but no, so first of all, you'd listen to them, but there's a lot of informality. The coffee breaks are very important.
I bet.
The coffee breaks are important. We'll start going to lunch together, dinner together, and just to get to know one another.
Yeah.
Tell me about your church. Tell me about the needs. Tell me about the challenges. They'll be saying that to us, the American cardinals. Tell us about the United States. What's going on? We hear this, we hear that. So it's a beautiful pollination of wisdom and knowledge and people of the Church Universal.
What do you say to those maybe who aren't familiar with the process about this clash that they talk about between the liberal side of the church that they feel was represented by Pope Francis and that some people took issue with on a number of issues? Who am I to judge? And those big moments that are memorable from that, and the more conservative side of the church. And are you hoping that the next selection pulls the church back to a more traditional place?
Well, I think that's more of a hermeneutic. I shouldn't be using these fancy words. I think that's more of a mindset of people on the outside looking in. Within, we don't kind of sense that. We don't, like I right now don't know who's the liberals, who's the conservatives. I don't know. And we won't, you'd say, I think every cardinal in the world will say, we need a pope with some of the characteristics of Pope Francis. Every cardinal would say that. We never want to lose that. They might also say, but here's some things we'd like to see the new pope emphasize. I don't think, Martha, we don't look at one another as belonging to camps. We look at one another as believers, as disciples, as brothers.
People talk about the Holy Spirit helping to make the decision for the successor of St. Peter. And then others will say, oh, it's all very political, and the cardinals get together and they sort of hash it out. How do you see it?
Well, you've heard me tell the story last time in 2013 when we had the opening prayer, because prayer is extraordinarily important, and we had a reflection given by a wonderful Franciscan preacher. I wish I could remember his name. And he said to us, Eminences, you're all scared because you have a tough job to elect the next pope. He said, let me put your mind at ease. It's easy. The Holy Spirit has already chosen the next pope. Your job is to find out who it is. And of course we all chuckled and said, hey, that's kind of nice to hear. But he said, you also remember in our Catholic wisdom, we believe that grace, the power of God, the power and inspiration of the Holy Spirit, builds on nature. So he works in and through us. It's not some thunderbolt. It's kind of coming from within. Heart, soul, mind, see? So he said, there is a human element in this. And that's why it's so important for you to get to know one another and to talk honestly to one another. That's what I find. So you talk about politics. When we say politics in the United States, we mean campaigning. Forget about it. Okay, there's none of that. There's no campaigning. But you would begin to see when you would be impressed. And if I have a brother cardinal whom I know well, I'd say, tell me about this guy. He really touched my heart when he spoke. That kind of stuff, to get to know things, you bet.
Right. Do you feel that there's a weight of the pressure of the future of the church?
No, it is.
How do you deal with that, I would imagine?
It is a burden, you know, when you
Yes.
walk in and say, this is a bit of a burden.
It's a big deal.
This will be one of the most important decisions I ever make. This is a time for judgment.
In the Wall Street Journal, Peggy Noonan wrote a piece about
It was excellent.
It was
I read
excellent,
it. Yeah.
yes. And she described who she would hope, as a Catholic and as a observer of Catholic life and life in general. She said, I hope it's someone who expresses joy and who's in love with Jesus and who follows the pattern of St. Philip Neri.
St. Philip Neri.
We just went by his
right
church on the way here.
Yeah.
I couldn't help but think when I was reading it, this person sounds like Cardinal Dolan.
Well, thank you. I hope so. I hope I'm not a crab. The church doesn't eat crabs, as Pope Francis would often remind us.
Do you think there will ever be an American Pope?
Well, you have to remember, in the eyes of the world, we just had one. Because when they say America, they mean the New World.
Right.
So North and South America. You mean from the United States?
Yes.
I don't know, and I'm not saying I have immense regard for my brothers, but I'm thinking there is, again, as a church historian, there is a bit of a wisdom that the successor of St. Peter and the vicar of the Prince of Peace on earth should not be too closely tied to major powers, because he has to be extraordinarily impartial. He has to be a source of reconciliation. So you can never be thought of as trying to represent a particular power block. Now, I'm not saying any of my brother cardinals from the United States would do that, but I sometimes think the college cardinals say, you know what, there's a wisdom in somebody from kind of a more neutral place.
Could you ever see yourself in that role?
Not unless I've had too much beer.
Very well done. Martha's full conversation with Cardinal Dolan will be available on Fox Nation today at 4 p.m. Eastern. You can also listen on the Untold Story podcast Wednesday, which is available at foxnewspodcast.com.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.